Hi, I'm Chuck Olenek. I'm a reenactor. And I used to use my reenacting talents, skills, garb I scrounged together, replica and original artifacts. Teachers would call that realia or manipulatives. And I'd bring these into the classroom. And I would use living history to try to breathe life into a subject that my students would consider as dead as the people we were studying. And after 36 years of gathering garb together, I have an entire room full of garb at the house, and I have a passion for bringing the past to life and for preserving landmarks, since landmarks do go away. So here's my mission Odyssey. Originally, I was going to travel from San Diego and just do one savage burn up the coast, like a number of people have, and visit each of the 21 missions and a few of the Asistencias, those are spin-off missions, and the Presidios. And then COVID-19 hit. And my plans had to change because I was in lockdown and I was doing research. And it began to make very little sense to me to drive down to Mission San Diego and then drive over to an Asistencia and then zigzag across the map, because my trip would have really looked a lot like this. Pomona, San Diego, Santa Isabel, San Luis Rey, San Antonio de Paula, San Juan Capistrano, San Gabriel, San Bernardino, San Fernando, San Buenaventura. So I hit upon a different plan. I would visit the Asistencias first that I knew about, driving down I-15 in California, and then I would loop over to the missions, and I would go visit the 21 missions, except that I discovered during my research that there weren't 21 missions, there were 23 in Alta California that started from the coast. So, okay, that changed the plans. Also, the 3 Asistencias that I knew about, turns out there were more. One of them is, or the remains of it is on the base at Camp Pendleton. One is on private land up in Santa Margarita. One's under a freeway in Ventura County. And some are just simply markers. And I'm going to be visiting those. I hope you'll follow me along on this mission. Today, we are going to Asistencia, San Bernardino, which is actually in Redlands, which sounds confusing, about 30 miles from my home. I hope you'll stick with me. This is the San Bernardino Asistencia or Estancia, depending on who you talk to. The words are fairly loaded. An estancia would have been a ranch that would have been built to support a mission. In this case, it would have been the mission at San Gabriel. An Asistencia would have had a higher status. It would have been essentially a baby mission waiting to grow up. And there was a series of missions placed inland to support the missions on the coast. The chain never really took off, though. This one was built in 1819. Mission San Gabriel took control of these lands, but by 1812, the Serrano and Cahuilla had revolted against the Spanish. The revolts were suppressed, the Asistencia was established, and the Cahuilla ended up providing vaqueros to work the lands. Following the usual plan, a chapel was constructed, as well as quarters for a visiting priest, because this was going to be an Asistencia and wouldn't have its own priest for a while. And storerooms and workshops were also built. Now, in 1819, same year as the founding of the Estancia or Asistencia in San Bernardino, which is actually in Redlands now because the borders moved, the local Native Americans, who were conveniently renamed Serrano by the Spanish, ended up digging this Zanja, or this trench, which was designed for irrigation of the crops, because each of the missions really relied heavily upon irrigation for those crops. They were in the business of raising food. What a Zanja was a large ditch that was dug for irrigation. It was often lined with stones. You could see a really good example by Mission Santa Barbara. In 1826, American explorer and mountain man Jedediah Strong Smith arrived with a party in Alta California, and they arrived at the Asistencia San Bernardino, asked where there were people of importance, and the folks pointed west to San Gabriel Mission, and Jedediah's partner, who spoke Spanish, convinced a rancher to loan them some horses, and they set off to the west along the Cucamonga Road, and they camped at the Mud Springs or the Cienega in what would later become San Dimas. Spent the night there and then moved on to Mission San Gabriel, and they were greeted warmly and treated as honored guests. And then the governor of Alta California wasn't very happy that Americans had shown up, and so Jedediah and his friends were arrested and they were sent to San Diego. And an American sea captain intervened and convinced the governor to allow Smith to leave, and to leave the way he came, or the terms. And Smith got provisions, went up to Mission San Gabriel, and then pushed on. And when he reached the Asistencia, he felt that he had lived up to the terms of the agreement, because he did head back in the direction he had come into Alta California. He just decided that at the Asistencia he would just turn left and head towards the north. Now, Smith would later return and do almost exactly the same thing. He visited the Asistencia San Bernardino and then traveled a couple of days towards Mission San Gabriel, Arcangel, and decided at this point he was going to push north. And at Mission San Jose, he ran into the same governor who had him arrested and removed from the country. In 1834, secularization took place. Also, an Indian raid resulted in the Asistencia being looted. It fell into disrepair, into ruin. The Conservation Corps ended up restoring the Asistencia using San Antonio Asistencia as a model. I ran into the man who is working with the Redlands Conservatory, who are now taking care of the Asistencia, and I pleaded my case. He let me in. I got kind of a private tour. So this is amazing. I'm enjoying this. Asistencia San Bernardino was rebuilt using Asistencia San Antonio de Paula as a model, but there were also elements brought in from the various missions. For instance, rebuilding in a quadrangle with a wall, sticking a chapel in one corner, and the rooms that would have been used as workshops and that served other purposes, surrounding this. Also, you would see design elements like a wavy pattern that is on some of the doors. And that's very common with the other missions. There were other elements that were brought in, plus it's a little more modernized. You do see, for instance, modern lighting. Because, hey, from the 21st century. The bell, very important feature. This is not the original bell of the Asistencia. The Asistencias and the missions were secularized in 1834. The bell here, though, the date on it says 1856. It's a real temptation to ring this, but I'm not going to because a very nice man let me in here. Here we have the center of the compound with the well and a building that is now being used as the museum. The murals on the museum part of the Asistencia are not historically accurate as far as their depiction of the Serrano, because they're shown here wearing loincloths, which is not what they did. But again, it was the 60s. And you have to view art as, a part of its time. This is the first leg of my mission Odyssey. And I'm going to take a few moments to just sit here on the bench and gaze out at the courtyard and drink it in. I was very fortunate that I was allowed in here by the caretaker, and he let me go around with my camera, and he gave me pretty much a guided tour that was very informative of not just the Asistencia, but the whole restoration process. Because, this has a bell tower. The bell tower didn't exist in period. There's a bell from 1856. He pointed out the work that was done as far as the sidewalks that were done by the Conservation Corps, which ended up getting. He showed me the whole process of he'd been power washing the sidewalks, and that pointed out, what color is that? I didn't know it was a test. And I said pink, which was the right answer. He said, the Conservation Corps decided that the sidewalks themselves would be dyed pink to go with the tile roofs. I got a lesson in brick and adobe. Now that if adobe isn't sealed, adobe falls apart. And the brickwork that is around here, it's Redlands brick. Now it's made from local materials. And in a way that's appropriate too, because all the missions and Asistencias were made with local materials. So this makes sense. So I'm about to start the next leg of my journey, and I hope you'll be coming with me. Well, it's on to the second leg of my mission Odyssey, which would be the Asistencia San Antonio de Paula, which sometimes is called a mission.